Oh, hey there. Didn't see you spying on me from the ceiling. Today we're going to be talking about how us night owls can wake up so early in the morning. Man, who wants to wake up so early anyways? It is painful. Anyhow, it's time to get up, get to work, and talk about it. Let's go. Oh my gosh. How to wake up at 6 a.m. or at least early in the morning if you are a night owl. I couldn't figure it out until now. So I'm going to tell you what worked for me, how I was able to wake up early, and if it had any benefits, as well as the science behind whether waking up early is actually beneficial, and if it's actually easier or harder for a night owl. So first and foremost, if you look at the scientific research by all the sleep studies and sleep science out there, and if you check out the book Win by Dan Pink, which cites a lot of it, there's actually a chronobiology to it. This is a term to reference the fact that in our genetics, some of us are naturally better wired to wake up later in the day. I mean, some of you can relate. You just prefer going to sleep late at night, really late sometimes. And social media, the phone doesn't help with that. And then you prefer waking up late in the day. Turns out it is harder for night owls to wake up early, and perhaps you don't need to wake up early. We'll get into that. Let's check out some of the scientific studies. So one of the studies observed in this book, Win, is one that really covers how plants have a genetic chronobiology too. Certain plant species were studied, and they checked to see if these plants would actually open their flowers or close their flowers based off the sunlight outside, or just based off their natural circadian rhythm and clock cycle. Turns out it's the latter. They put these plants into a completely dark room so they couldn't tell when sunlight was and when it wasn't, because no light came in. And sure enough, they opened and closed their flowers on schedule based off their own genetic clockwork. There is studies that show that humans have this bell curve, and some of us are night owls, some of us are early birds. Unfortunately, successful entrepreneurs or influencers online, or just random Navy SEALs, might guilt you into believing that you need to wake up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. to beat the crowd or succeed in life. Or, if you can't, that just means you have bad willpower and you're lazy. Well, it does turn out that that's not necessarily true. For night owls, it's actually more difficult for them to wake up. Society oftentimes has made it so that they are forced to wake up at a 9 to 5 or even earlier. That's against their natural rhythm. One other example of this, and this it goes beyond adults, but it goes to children too. Various studies have been done across school districts in the US where they have experimented with changing the start time of schools. And especially with teenagers, that's usually when their circadian rhythm changes, and their chronobiology focuses on them being late night owls more than any other time in their life. And guess what the studies found after these school districts across various states experimented with shifting their school start time so these children didn't have to wake up so early? There was a dramatic decrease in drunk driving, in car crashes, school grades went up, attendance went up, and GPAs and school scores went up as well. So all these point to the fact that simply changing the timing on when we use the optimal point of our day can really lead to dramatic results without changing anything else in our lives. Now, you didn't come here to hear me talk about all these studies and why you shouldn't wake up early.
You came here to see how you could wake up early, even if it's just to experiment with it like I did. Now, I've posted various experiments over the years on what I've done to try and wake up earlier, many of which have failed. Some would sometimes work and some wouldn't work. This included stuff like certain apps, blue light blockers, and various stuff. We're not even going to get into that, but you get the point. Some things supposedly work or help, but some things may not. The biggest thing that has helped me is necessity. Now, if you don't have a urgent need to wake up that early, don't worry, stay tuned. There's some other tests and experiments that I can share with you that have helped. However, necessity is definitely the bearer of the greatest change in terms of waking up early and going to sleep earlier. What I found is sometimes I just cannot go to sleep earlier, so I just go to sleep at the normal time. But because of a career or a life or an obligation that I really don't want to mess up, I am just ready to wake up. I know I'm screwed if I don't. So when that alarm clock goes off and it's 5 a.m. or 7 a.m. and it hurts a lot, I don't care because I need to make this meeting. And then theorized about, but I've lately had the fortune of trying finally, which is simply moving to different time zones. By doing that, let's say you work on the East Coast, but then you move to the West Coast and you live on the West Coast. That's a 3-hour shift in time zones without you technically having to actually change or wake up earlier, because a 9 a.m. is a 6 a.m. in California. I found this to be very interesting. Now, does productivity actually increase? Does it actually improve? Yes and no. See, a lot of these people touting the power of waking up early usually have to go to sleep early too. So when you sum up the total amount of output in a day, it's probably usually fairly similar. Unless, of course, you're one of those night owls who tends to goof off halfway through their work, or later on in the evening regardless. Or you're one of those early birds who can just keep working into the night. Highly unlikely, but that's a possibility too. So before you just immediately accept some of these people saying how incredible waking up early is, you really got to track and sum the total amount of output and effectiveness. Now, for some people, they claim, I try waking up earlier and I do get a lot more done and it's more creative and I have the proof to show you. Others may try and may not see that. Here's what I can tell you right now, having tried it and experimented with waking up at around like 7 a.m. and finishing my workday around 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. or even 2:30 p.m. rather than the typical 5 or 6 p.m. I would say that the general output has roughly remained the same. However, I do get some benefits and opportunities by being able to go to certain places like a park or a tourist destination or the grocery store without having to run into as many people or traffic, or basically I still have a quarter of the day to enjoy while there's still daylight. I could go on a hike and so forth while others are working. Now, does this mean I have to wake up or go to sleep earlier? Yes, and that is a downside. So, a trade-off to that is if you're someone who likes to go out at night, go to bars, nightclubs, it's not going to really work as well because those places are they don't really even start until like 11 p.m. And so that's another little thought that I've always had that just people never really address. The whole idea of all successful people wake up this early. First off, that's not true, but by definition, that implies that a lot of them have never experienced or never partaken in the nightlife area of life, which is a big part of many people's lives. In order to each their own, I think no Jocko-Wallick's similar. But just keep that in mind. A lot of these people, they like to brag about it, or maybe it's just personal accountability. Jocko, he posts his watch every morning on Instagram to show that he woke up at 3 a.m. Maybe for your ego or something that is kind of cool, it's showing that discipline and willpower. But at the end of the day, if you get more done or even more done by waking up later and going to sleep later, is it really that much of an issue? I know there's certain people like Michael Sartain who works the nightlife and so has to go to sleep late and then wake up late. Or you have someone like Athlean X, who is a big fitness YouTuber. His name's the man behind the brand is Jeff Cavalier. He did a day in the life video, and guess what? He wakes up late and then he works late into the night, and he feels he gets ahead in the night because everyone's sleeping and he's working. Isn't that very similar to, you know, waking up early while everyone's still sleeping and getting the work done? Potentially consider blocking out all the light in your room, putting your phone, TV devices far away, not eating at least 3 hours before bed, not consuming caffeine after noon, and then really focus on the feeling and try not to work too much off your clocks and alarms and systems. There's actually even products out there that people use. There's a daylight alarm which shines light rather than makes a sound. There's very successful people like Matt Frazier, 5-time CrossFit Games champion, who uses that type of alarm instead of a noise-based alarm. And what I found personally is when I change time zones, oftentimes I gravitate not so much to the time of day and the sunrise and sunset, but also I gravitate a lot more to just, oh, it's 11 p.m. That number means I need to go to sleep or start prepping. And so that's the changes. You still stick to that 11 p.m. sleep time, which ends up being worse for you. So try and get off the number system and try and work more on that light-based system. Don't try and like depend on a certain time to go to sleep. Focus more on just getting asleep way ahead of time and not having to use your clock to judge when it's appropriate. Your phone is obviously a big issue. It's a huge temptation, especially late at the evening when your willpower is drained and it's easier to succumb to temptation. So really try considering your habits around checking apps or doing certain things with your phone late at night. See if you can lock your phone away early, or if you can't, see if you can put it on airplane mode or put it off the internet so you're not addicted to checking it. Maybe consider moving it away from your nightstand or doing something else, because that usually sucks you down a rabbit hole where you spend more time than you thought in your bedroom just playing on your phone or watching TV. And then the final thing is, if you can, see if you can install or choose a bedroom that has a lot of windows and is open to the sunlight. I found something really powerful, more than artificial light simulation, is when the sun rises and then a bunch of light pierces through and enters the room. It's probably one of the best signals for waking up, and I highly recommend doing something like that. And conversely, late at night, once it's getting dark, you want to make it even darker to simulate that the light is going away, the sun is set. So really reduce any artificial light you can, get curtains if you have to, and really try and get to that sleep cycle that works for you. So test it out for yourself. I don't think waking up early is this magic cure, but for some it is a miracle morning routine that really does help them. So maybe this will help you as a fellow night owl. I hope it works for you. Personally, I think that there are some pros and cons to it, and if you can use all the tools, sometimes it is better to wake up in the morning. But for the most part, in conclusion, I think that as long as you get your workout put in, it doesn't really matter if you wake up earlier or later. There are certain opportunities for waking up earlier or later. For example, when I attended Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, guess what? People start lining up as early as 3 a.m., 4 a.m. So that was a moment where I was super eager to wake up early and there is a benefit to doing that if you want a good seat. So